Welcome to the cutting edge of the global awakening.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex.
Well, it looks like the North Tower of the World Trade Center has just completely collapsed.
The U.S. dollar's status as the preeminent reserve currency is under attack.
This is a mathematical fact. Tens of trillions of dollars are being extracted from the United States of America.
You really want the truth? Then just follow the money.
Welcome to Follow the Money Radio, a broadcast dedicated to your personal, spiritual, and financial liberty. And now, here's your voice of reason in the midst of global chaos, economist and best-selling author, Jerry Robinson.
Friends, welcome to this week's program. So glad that you're joining us. Good Saturday morning to you. All over the world, we want to say a special welcome to all of our brand new listeners who just seem to have found us down in Brazil. I want to say hello, hola, to all of our listeners down in Brazil. We also have a slew of you who have been logging in from Canada. We want to say hello to you as well. We have a very big broadcast today. We're going to be talking about the build-up to war that we see from this Obama administration. War is in the air. The State Department is calling for war. Obama has not been very coherent in his arguments. We'll talk about that in a moment. We're not going to spend too much time on other news this week because of what's happening. In fact, strikes could begin occurring as early as Sunday, that is tomorrow, according to some reports, in Syria. Now, just a real quick look at what happened in the markets this week. The stocks ended the month of August pretty bad. Actually, the worst month since May of 2012. Gold fell back below $1,400 after marching right through it recently. Oil also down as the dollar is getting buoyed and is moving higher based upon this fear factor. For whatever reason, global investors still run to the dollar in times like these, whenever there's a fear of war, instead of gold or silver, which really makes no sense when you think about it, considering the fact that the United States is bankrupt. They're so bankrupt, they can't even afford this Syria invasion. There was a huge report put out on Friday explaining that the Pentagon doesn't have enough money. Unlike Libya, they were able to pull that heist off, but they don't have the ability to finance this Syrian cruise missile campaign, or this limited, narrow act, as Obama has called it. I'm going to play you some clips today. There was a shocking speech given by Secretary of State John Kerry yesterday on Friday. And if I was a Martian, if I just landed on this planet, and I saw John Kerry speaking and then I saw President Obama speaking, I would never tell you that the president was Barack Obama. I would believe that it was John Kerry. John Kerry has been speaking eloquently about this, forcefully about this, building the case for it, as President Obama has been a bumbling stooge, barely able to put two sentences together and cannot make up his mind about what he wants to do. It's getting to the point where when I see President Obama talking about Syria, I cringe because he appears to be completely incompetent. I mean, it's an absolute disaster as you watch Obama talk about this. He can't make up his mind, and he's getting resistance from all places, the Pentagon. Now, who saw that coming? Who imagined that the Pentagon would give him resistance? How? Well, they've been leaking information. Have you noticed how all of these details have been coming out about now we have 6 warships in the region and the strike may occur on Sunday? Where is this information coming from? Well, a lot of it's coming from our own sources in the Pentagon, and they're classified sources, and Obama has been expressing a lot of anger about this. Politico did a big write-up on this, explaining that, and you never know if this is all theater or if it's real, but according to Politico, Obama is very peeved, the White House is very peeved that the Pentagon has been so liberal with its pronouncements on what it's planning on doing or what it's thinking about doing or what it may do, thus exposing the plans. But have you ever seen anything like this? Have you ever seen so much detail being said up front? It's almost as if they know the American people are against this, and so they're trying to head off anything at the pass. They're trying to get your support, or at least not leave you in the dark as they begin to drop bombs on Syria. Because after all, your opinion is very important to these politicians. They really want to know what you think, despite the fact that Congress is nowhere to be seen. They're AWOL. 162 congressmen are demanding a House vote prior to any military action. But the House is in recess, unfortunately, until September 9th. 80% of Americans polled think that the Congress should decide on this matter. Well, wouldn't you believe it? The Congress actually has the power to declare war, according to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 of our own Constitution, that it is the Congress that is given express permission not only to coin money, regulate the value thereof, which they've abdicated over to the Federal Reserve, but they have the sole power to declare war. President is the commander-in-chief of the military forces, but he is only able to execute that war, not declare it. That's the balance of powers, the checks and balances that we had put into place to safeguard us from tyranny. But the Congress, and especially the Obama administration, wants to avoid what happened in Britain this week, as David Cameron, the prime minister there, took this before the parliament and got shot down, thus shutting down, in essence, all of Britain's talking points about what they were going to do and how they were going to be involved. The U.S. immediately turned to France. France has now upped the ante on Syria. Remember, France is the old colonial power over Syria. They used to belong to France, Syria did. And so a lot of the underlying topics have been, is France wanting its colony back? Well, not if Russia has anything to say about it. But either way, the military is going to need congressional approval to obtain more funds because they're broke, and they have to get the Congress to approve more funding for this war, for this limited, narrow act. We can't even call it a war. But let me tell you why I want the Congress to vote on this. I want every single one of these congressmen on record. None of them want to vote on this. They don't want this to stand in their way of their next re-election. They don't want you to know what they really feel about it, because if it goes wrong and they don't vote on it, they can say, well, we didn't vote for it, we didn't want it. Although, if we force a vote in the Congress, these congressmen who have sold their souls, many of them, to the military-industrial complex, would have to explain a no vote. And I would like that. I would like for the congressmen to have to explain a no vote to their military-industrial complex buddies. Now, for years, it has been my opinion that what is happening in the Middle East is based upon something known as the petrodollar system. It is the control of the flow of natural resources through that region. Now, remember, the Middle East sits on 62% of the world's oil supply. It also sits on a vast amount of the world's natural gas supply. And the United States benefits from the control over the flow of that oil. Now, later I'm going to play you some clips from a variety of people who have said over and over and over and over and over that all the wars over there are based on oil, and that your son and your daughter and your grandson and your granddaughter and you, if you've served in the military and have served in the Middle East, have been there for oil. But that's not how they sell it to begin with. What they do is they come out and talk about the helpless civilians that are being massacred. This is always how they do it. There is a rogue dictator running things in Syria, and we must take him out. Well, what about North Korea? What about North Korea? What about China? What about Africa? What about all of the atrocities that are going on all around the world? What about those? Why Syria? Why right now? Okay, so I'm going to play you a couple of clips from John Kerry's speech that he gave yesterday. This was a very bold speech, very strong speech. If you haven't listened to it, it's about 18 minutes long. I would encourage you to go over. I think we've put it up on ftmflix.com. Oh, by the way, those of you who don't know ftmflix.com, it's our video site. So as we come across documentaries or news or videos of any kind that are interesting, we simply place them up on that website, ftmflix.com, ftmflix.com. You can check it out there. 18-minute speech by John Kerry talking about why we should build support for a war in Syria, a limited war. And again, maybe not even a war. These guys are so apologetic for the way that they have handled things throughout the years. You'll hear him, maybe not in this clip, but if you listen to the whole speech, you'll hear him apologize for Iraq. It will not be like Iraq. This will not be an invasion that will be like Iraq. This will not be like Afghanistan, he says. It will not be like Libya. Well, why are you putting all of those invasions down because you're the ones who built support for them? Why are you telling us now that you're apologizing for them and they won't be like that? These guys just don't make any sense. All right, let's roll the first clip here. We have John Kerry saying, "Don't take my word for it. Take all of the ample evidence that exists out there, thousands and thousands of testimonials and reports showing that this event did happen." And then he'll apologize for Iraq and try to get your mind off that. This isn't about Iraq. This isn't like Iraq. We're not doing the weapons of mass destruction again without any evidence because we have so much evidence, mountains and mountains and mountains of evidence. Well, here's John Kerry to tell you all about it. Roll clip one.
That's why this morning's release of our government's unclassified estimate of what took place in Syria is so important. Its findings are as clear as they are compelling. I'm not asking you to take my word for it. Read for yourself, everyone, those listening, all of you, read for yourselves the evidence from thousands of sources, evidence that is already publicly available. And read for yourselves the verdict reached by our intelligence community about the chemical weapons attack the Assad regime inflicted on the opposition and on opposition-controlled or contested neighborhoods in the Damascus suburbs on the early morning of August 21st. Our intelligence community has carefully reviewed and re-reviewed information regarding this attack. And I will tell you it has done so more than mindful of the Iraq experience. We will not repeat that moment. Accordingly, we have taken unprecedented steps to declassify and make facts available to people who can judge for themselves. But still, in order to protect sources and methods, some of what we know will only be released to members of Congress, the representatives of the American people. That means that some things we do know, we can't talk about publicly.
Okay, so John Kerry, Secretary of State John Kerry, doesn't want you to take his word for it because he wants you to go out into the internet, I guess, and look and see all of the evidence that exists that Bashar al-Assad gassed his own people. Now, there's only one problem with that theory, and that is there is no evidence. In fact, the only thing that this administration has put forth that sounds even remotely like evidence is a phone call that they intercepted, that was intercepted actually, I believe, by Israel with using the NSA technologies, which, by the way, there you go. We should keep our NSA because it comes in handy. See, it protects us from the terrorists. And there was a phone call that was intercepted where a Syrian general was on the phone with some underling yelling and wanting to know if chemical weapons had been released in Syria. He was outraged and upset and trying to figure out what was happening. Now, that's not the kind of phone call you make after you launch a chemical weapons attack. That's the kind of phone call you make whenever you don't know what happened. So the administration here is on thin ice. They have very little in the way of evidence. And then what they say is that this isn't like Iraq. We're not doing things on flimsy evidence because we know that we lied to you when we told you that weapons of mass destruction were in Iraq. We lied to you bold-faced, and now we're saying we're sorry for that. We didn't mean to do that. We also know that we lied to you about the NSA whenever it was said that we were spying on you and Edward Snowden broke all this information, and we know that the president lied to you and said that there was no snooping on Americans, and we know that James Clapper lied to you, the director of national intelligence, when he went before Congress and said, no, there's no snooping on Americans. And we know that we lied to all of our partners when we told them that we weren't snooping on them. And we know that we lied about the UN, that we weren't bugging the UN headquarters and listening to all of our friends. And we knew we lied to Israel when we told them that we were not spying on them, but in fact we were. But you're just going to have to take our word. Now, there's ample evidence. There's mountains of evidence out there. But if that doesn't suffice, the evidence that we have, we really can't share with you. You're just going to have to trust us. Are you kidding me? Did John Kerry just ask the American people to trust this government after they have done what they have done? The currency for these politicians is you and me, and our goodwill. As long as we continue to buy what they sell, they're happy. But the moment that we stop buying what they're selling, they know they're in trouble. And they're trying to sell you war because their buddies in the military-industrial complex need a good fourth quarter. These bombs sit on shelves. They have a shelf life. And if you don't drop these bombs, then you don't have a demand for more. The bomb-making business is part of the military-industrial complex. These guys make some of the stuff that goes into chemical weapons, which they're belly aching about now. Syria gasses its own people with chemical weapons. Well, where did those chemical weapons come from, John Kerry? Where did they come from? Who sold Syria the stuff that they need to do that? Well, evidence points to the fact that the Western companies are selling it to these guys. You'll also hear John Kerry, if you listen to this full speech, he bellyaches about how Iran was gassed by Iraq, and Iran can sympathize. Well, who supplied and helped Iraq gas Iran? I mean, this is the twilight zone, friends. We are living in the twilight zone. This stuff cannot even compare to fiction. I was telling Jennifer the other day, who reads fiction? Who needs fiction? Truth is certainly stranger than fiction, especially what we see going on today. All right, we got another clip here from John Kerry. He's going to tell you now, after he's told you, don't take my word for it, and then he says, now you just have to trust us. Totally schizophrenic. Then he says that the intelligence community has high confidence. High confidence. High confidence? I want hard evidence, not high confidence. High confidence is what you said that you had for other things that you've been wrong about. We don't want high confidence. We want hard evidence. And even if we find hard evidence, there should still be a debate in this country as to whether we should go carpet bomb countries like Syria whenever they're engaged in war. Now think about this for a moment before I play this clip. Because he's also going to tell you, he's going to appeal to your American patriotism. He's going to appeal to your sense of justice. He's going to appeal to your national conscience and say, we are the United States of America. We don't let this kind of stuff go on. Oh, really? Is that right? Because according to a report that was leaked just recently, last month in fact, July 22nd, I believe, a leaked document showing that U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan have killed 147 innocent civilians, including 94 children. According to the Columbian Law School report that I'm holding in my hand here, an in-depth study into the drone strikes run by the United States found that 98%, now sit down when you hear this because you won't believe this, 98% of all casualties from drone strikes led by the United States were civilians. Let me say this again. 98% of all of the casualties from drone strikes are civilians. That is, for every, and then another way they put it, based upon the actual numbers, for every one terrorist they kill with the drone strike, 50 innocent civilians are also killed. Now, do you remember seeing those images on your screen? Where is the moral outrage for the dead women and children that the U.S. is killing with drones? What does the United States call it whenever they kill a woman or a child? What do they call it? Oh, it's called collateral damage. That's right, collateral damage. Now, whenever Syria is in the middle of a war and innocent women and children die, what's it called? Oh, it's called terrorism. This is an act of war. But when the United States does it, they call it collateral damage. It's just what happens in war. You're going to have innocent women and children die in war. It's just tough. Here's a real general rule of thumb. If white people kill brown people, it's called collateral damage. If brown people kill other brown people or white people, it's called terrorism. I remember when Robert Bales, remember the Sergeant Robert Bales who got busted for spraying down 16 women and children in Afghanistan? 9 children out of the 16. He wakes up in the middle of the night, goes crazy, goes berserk, goes on a rampage with his machine AK-47, starts, just killing women and children in the village. And then later says, oh, it was post-traumatic stress and blah, blah, blah. I couldn't help it. I couldn't help but killing kids. I just couldn't help it. And the judge gave him a reprieve and said, well, you should get the death penalty, but we're going to waive it because you're pleading guilty. And so he gets life in prison without parole. Right? Then you have Nidal Malik Hassan. Remember the Fort Hood massacre? And he was serving in the military as a psychiatrist. Well, he goes on a rampage and starts shooting up Army guys. By the way, these are white guys. And while he's shooting them, he kills 13. And then whenever he goes before the judge says, well, you can't plead guilty. You don't get to plead guilty, so you have to have the death penalty. You don't get a chance of life in prison without parole. So they forced him into the death penalty, but they let the other guy who killed brown people off because it was collateral damage. Are you getting this? How does the world view this? And by the way, where are the voices that are speaking up for these innocent children who are dying from drone strikes? 94 children? 94 children. What if we had images of those on our TV screen? All laid out right there for you to see. You notice how you don't see that? Part of this whole propaganda war that you're in, this crazy information war that you're in, is attempting to show you only one side of the story. Victors always write the history. That's why Indians sound dumb when you go and you read United States history. Indians look like idiots. They're dumb. They're worshiping trees and rocks and rivers and streams. And the white man is, he's very eloquent and he's very sophisticated and he's educated and all of this. And the white guy looks great. The Indian looks dumb. Who wrote the history? Victors write the history. So you aren't hearing about the innocent women and children that are dying at the hands of the United States drone strikes. And no one's speaking up for them. And if they are, their voices are muted. Certainly the mainstream media is not talking about it. They're completely derelict. They're run by corporations who benefit from war. I say this, if the United States wants the world to stop killing innocent people, if they want rogue regimes and crazies to stop killing innocent people, why don't they begin by leading the way? All right, I'm going to run out of time. I've got too many clips to play. Play clip 2. Intelligence community has high confidence, not hard evidence. Roll the tape.
In all of these things that I have listed, in all of these things that we know, all of them, the American intelligence community has high confidence. High confidence. This is common sense. This is evidence. These are facts. So the primary question is really no longer, what do we know? The question is, what are we collectively, what are we in the world going to do about it? As previous storms in history have gathered, when unspeakable crimes were within our power to stop them, we have been warned against the temptations of looking the other way. History is full of leaders who have warned against inaction, indifference, and especially against silence when it mattered most.
If you listen to this whole audio clip, what you'll hear, the whole speech that he gave, you'll hear a lot of lecturing and you'll hear a lot of graphic details as John Kerry attempts to create the link between Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and the ordering of these attacks. Then they say that the evidence is overwhelming that he did it. But then they say, well, the real evidence we can't give you. And in fact, they can't even give to their international partners. That's what Russia was complaining about this week, saying, listen, if you've got this evidence, you need to let us see it. And if you don't let us see it, then let's wait for the United Nations to come back with an assessment. And the West is like, no, we got to go to war now. We got to go to war now. And the international partners are saying, you've done this before. You have lied the world into war before. So we want to see the evidence now. And the United States says, well, we can't let you see any evidence because it would harm national security. Really? The only thing that I can think of that would harm national security is that if the United States military was involved, or the United States CIA or some sort of intelligence community apparatus was involved in this attack. That would be the only thing that I could think of that would prevent us from seeing the evidence. Only the United States could come up with a logic that in order to save Syria, we need to go bomb it. To bring peace to Syria, we need to go send bombs on it. How many innocent people are going to die whenever Barack Obama gives the order and says, go ahead with the strikes? Well, it'll just be collateral damage, right? If any women or men die or any children die, it'll just be collateral damage. It's part of war. Now, I want to talk about the incentives here, because the incentive structure is vital. If you get this part, then you'll understand what's happening. And I don't have time to go into the pipeline, Syria, Iraq, Iran pipeline, which is hugely important. And I'm so glad to see that The Guardian picked up the story. We wrote an article on the Iran, Iraq, Syria pipeline. It's gone viral. It's just everywhere now. I'm finding it on some of the mainstream sites out there. They're pushing it. And I'm really glad to see that The Guardian now is coming out with the same story. This is about pipelines. It's about oil. And then, of course, you always have those people who say, well, Syria doesn't have any oil, so it can't be about oil. Syria has oil, but it doesn't have a whole lot of oil. That's true. Nevertheless, Syria is in the middle. It's a strategic area. It's a geopolitical pawn. It certainly has a huge role to play in the flow of natural resources, especially from Iran up to Europe. And I don't have time to get into all that, but you can read our article right there on the front page of FTM Daily if you don't know what I'm talking about. The Iraq, Iran, Syria pipeline, huge as compared to the Arab gas pipeline, which is financed by the Saudis and Qatar and all of those other nations, which, by the way, are against Iran. Now, let's talk about incentives for a moment. Think about this. Okay, the Syrian government, Bashar al-Assad, he's sitting in his country, and 95% of the thugs and murderers that are running through his streets that are called rebels are not even from Syria, okay? And yet the media continues to tell you this is a civil war. You know, the people of Syria are uprising against Assad. Well, the only thing I see is Syrian people fleeing for the exits, and we see now over 1.2 million refugees out of Syria, women, men, and children trying to get the heck out of the country. They don't want to fight the Assad government. They want out. They have Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra. According to one report I saw, over 1,200 different Islamic fascist organizations are running through the streets with U.S. weapons and Saudi weapons, and the people of Syria are scared to death. They're running out. So you have this thing they're calling a civil war, but it's not a civil war. It is an armed rebellion from the Islamic world into Syria. Can you imagine? I think I talked about this before. I'm sure I did on the show. You imagine if Russia got mad at us and said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to finance Al-Qaeda, and we're going to send them over to your streets, and now they're going to run through the streets. Let's say that you wake up in the morning, and all of a sudden you see Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra thugs with AK-47s and rocket launchers and shoulder-launched rockets, and they're running through your streets, terrorizing your city. Is that a civil war? Would you say that's a civil war? I mean, that's not a civil war. That's a war that somebody else is perpetrating on you. We'd be at war with Russia. Now, Syria is attempting to hold on to power. They're trying to move away from this Arab oil or Arab gas pipeline, moving over with Iran, strategically working with Russia. And are they rogue? Yeah, I mean, Syria and Iran and Russia, these guys are not good guys, okay? There's no doubt about it. But are Al-Qaeda better? Or is the Al-Nusra Front, are they better? Should we finance the enemy of our enemy? The enemy of our enemy is still our enemy. In this case, the last time I checked, Al-Qaeda is still, well, that's a whole can of worms. I'm not even going to go there. The phrase Al-Qaeda means the database, and Robin Cook, who was a top British politician, political leader, revealed this in an explosive report that he put out after he left office, explaining how the CIA and the MI6 in Britain, they had basically put together Al-Qaeda. They had financed the whole thing. They put it together. They were their stooges. And then the next thing you know, within weeks of this publication, Robin Cook, who is a healthy man, is walking up a hill in Scotland, and the next thing you know, he's dead. Keels over from a heart attack. That's awful convenient. Within weeks of him exposing this. These guys know this. Hillary Clinton said it, like I said. I mean, we have stuff on our website all about that. But think about this. You're Bashar al-Assad, all right? You're a rogue thug, no doubt about it. You're a dictator, and you have all of these foreign factions coming in financed by the West attempting to topple you, and they're not succeeding. And then the West says there's a red line. If you kill any of your people with chemical weapons, we're coming after you, okay? Well, what do you think you're going to do? Then they send over UN inspectors to come through your country, and you let them in. And then while they're there, you gas your own people? Now, I understand that some people are going to say, yeah, that's what the news said. That's what they said. That's exactly what happened. That's what the U.S. is saying. We got to support our troops. I saw the videos on YouTube. It must be real. And the government says it's true. Now, wait just a minute. Let's go back to incentive here. Everyone moves according to an incentive, and you have to have an incentive to do anything. So what would be the Syrian incentive to gas their own people when the UN inspectors are in the country, and the West has said, if you spray your people with chemical weapons, we're going to come over and bomb you? All right? Just think about it. It doesn't make any sense. Now, let's think about it from the other perspective. If you're the rebels and you hear the West say, if you launch chemical weapons attacks on your own people, we're going to come in and bomb you. What do these rebels want? They want to topple Assad. They want to take control of Syria. Of course, our government has thought this out. They know what's going to happen if they eventually topple Assad. They don't want to topple Assad right now because they know Al-Qaeda will be in charge of Syria instantly. Now, they're not ready to run Syria. They're just a big mess. But they would try, and then it would be another major headache for the United States. But the rebels have every incentive in the world to see civilians gassed in Syria and then have it blamed on the Syrian government. So the rebels have an incentive. How about the U.S.? Does the U.S. have an incentive? Of course it has an incentive. They've been wanting to go into Syria for a very long time, and in fact, we put this out on our website, in that article I was talking about Syria. We have in there evidence, explosive evidence that was produced by the Daily Mail that showed that the Washington had planned a false flag attack against Syria in the name of Bashar al-Assad. What they were going to do is they were going to launch a chemical weapons attack on the country, killing civilians, and then they were going to blame it on Assad and then use that as a pretext to war. Well, that got busted. There was this leaked email exchange between these military-industrial complex stooges over in Britain, and they were saying how the West has approved this deal. We need to get some chemical weapons and get it up there, and then they're going to unleash them. It's Western approved. It's Washington, approved by Washington. All right, well, these emails get leaked, and we got them right there on our website. These globalists told you what they were going to do this year. That report came out in January. Then almost exactly the way that they had described that they wanted to do it behind closed doors and before it got leaked, then it all of a sudden happens. All of these people are mysteriously killed, and there is no evidence that they've put forth that Syria themselves did it, nor do they have any incentive. You can't build a case that Syria would want to do this, but you can build a case why the rebels would stage a false flag attack like that. They stand to gain if Assad is taken out, and the U.S. stands to gain because they've been trying to do this for some time. This has been on their plates for a long time. In fact, let me play you a clip from General Wesley Clark. This guy is not some crackpot. He was one of the top generals, 3-star general in our military, and he was in a interview with Democracy Now! I think this is back in 2007, and he discusses a exchange or a conversation that he had at the Pentagon just about a week after the tragic events of 9/11. And he admits that the Bush administration had planned to go into Syria and Iran and several other countries. Roll the tape.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. So I said, well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda? He said, no. He says, there's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
So there you have it on record, top U.S. general exposing the plan to invade 7 countries over the course of 5 years. Of course, their timetable got messed up, and they were able to get into Libya. They were able, obviously, to topple Iraq, but Iraq is now a mess. Libya is a mess. And now they're moving into Syria. Lebanon's also going to be involved. Now, listen, Syria has said that these attacks were staged by the rebels in the West. Russia has said that these acts of aggression against the civilians in Syria were staged by the U.S. and the rebels and their allies. Syria has gone on record even further and said, this is not the last chemical weapons attack you're going to see. You're next going to see them hit Europe. They're exposing what these globalists are trying to do if you listen to what they're saying. They're saying that you're going to see an attack on Europe to galvanize Europe to go to war, and perhaps even in the United States. They might start doing things here in the United States to build support for a war in Syria. Why do they want this war in Syria? Breaks my heart to say this, but it's about oil. I had a guy call in the other day, and he said, Jerry, I love the work that you're doing there. You and your staff are doing a great job, and I got to say, though, that what you recently said about Syria and that article and the things that you've been saying and all of this, he said, if Mitt Romney had won and everything else was still the same, everything was the same, Syria had done what they done, Russia did what they did, we were still financing Al-Qaeda, he said, your message would not have a chance in hell. And he's right. If Mitt Romney were running the country, if he were in office and he were the one telling you all of this, if he were the one saying, we have to go get Syria, we got to get these guys, we got to support Al-Qaeda, he's right. I'm sure the majority of the Republicans would say, yeah, we got to go do it. It's harder for a Democratic president to push this kind of stuff through. However, I must admit, Obama is getting away with murder, literally, and he is getting away with more than Bush ever could get away with. But the caller was right. He was definitely right. If Romney were in office right now and I were saying exactly what I'm saying right now, I would be getting massive resistance from many Republicans who would be saying, you need to support the party line, you need to toe the party line, you must be a liberal, that kind of garbage. Because they actually think the Democrats and Republicans are different, right? They actually think that there's some sort of difference. And so they would demand that I, choose the Republican side and be on the right side of history. Well, history is going to show what all this has been about. And that is that it's been about oil and the control of the flow of oil. Don't make everything about oil being underneath the sand, right? There's an old bumper sticker that says, what's our oil doing under their sand with an American flag, right? Well, that's not really the whole reason why we're over there. We're not trying to get their oil. What we're trying to do is we're trying to control the flow of oil. You see, back in the early times, the mercantilist days, whenever the empires would send forth their ships to conquer different foreign lands, they would take their gold, bring it back, and then use it to create new money. So gold was pillaged, and it was sought, and the people were taken as slaves. And that's how war was done back in those times. But today, we don't need to go into a country and just hijack their oil. We don't need to go in and take their gold. We just have to install a dictator or somebody who will keep the country an absolute wreck and will do our bidding. That's how we do things today. And if you buy any of this garbage that the U.S. has been selling for the last, 10, 15 years, and even longer than that when we think about it, but I'm talking about this war on terror, this new fascination that they have. These guys who are running around, who are out to kill you, right? And at the same time that we are financing with your tax dollars that you should be so scared of. Well, is it really about terrorism? Is it really about stopping terrorists, all of our activity over in the Middle East? Are we really trying to help all of the helpless people in the Middle East? Let's ask somebody who should know, General Wesley Clark, who we just had on just a while ago, the previous clip. Let's ask him. This guy sat in numerous Pentagon meetings. He knows all of these guys. What does he think? Are we trying to help the helpless people of the Middle East in our actions in the region? What's the truth?
The truth is about the Middle East is, had there been no oil there, it would be like Africa. Nobody is threatening to intervene in Africa. The problem is the opposite. We keep asking for people to intervene and stop it. And there's no question that the presence of petroleum throughout the region has sparked great power involvement. Whether that was the specific motivation for the coup or not, I can't tell you, but there's always been this attitude that somehow we could intervene and use force in the region.
So there's General Wesley Clark saying that the war in the area, in the region, is all about oil because oil is in the Middle East, and that's why we're there. But everybody knows that General Wesley Clark's a liberal. Let's talk to a conservative. We need to get a real conservative to answer this question. So why are we in the Middle East? It's obviously about protecting innocent civilians, right? Hard right-winger and former UN ambassador John Bolton?
Well, Iran has made little secret of its desire to gain hegemony in the region of the Persian Gulf, the critical oil and natural gas producing region that we fought so many wars to try and protect our economy and from the adverse impact of losing that supply or having it available only at very high prices.
Well, that's a bit depressing. So, former UN ambassador and hard, ultra-right-winger conservative John Bolton says that your sons and daughters have spilled their blood in the Middle East to protect our economy. Well, that's not really the answer I was looking for. Maybe we need to go to a right-wing commentator, somebody who's really learns how to craft their words and explain well why we're over there. So maybe let's turn to, I don't know, Ann Coulter, a big political commentator on the far right. Surely she'll tell us why we're in the Middle East. Roll the tape.
Of the world for the United States, including oil. And by the way, this idea of going to war just for oil, of course we should go to war for oil. It's like saying you're going to war just for oxygen, just for food. We need oil. That's a good reason to go to war.
Okay, this isn't exactly going the way that I had hoped it would go, so we're running out of clips here. Surely we can find somebody that's going to tell us that this is not about oil. We've already heard from the left that it's about oil. And now we're hearing from the right that it's about... Let's go to John McCain. John McCain will tell us the truth. He's been working for the military-industrial complex for a long time. He has sold a lot of weapons for these different corporations, and he has been one of the major war hawks throughout the last several decades. I'm sure he'll explain why we're over there. John McCain, why are we in the Middle East?
My friends, I will have an energy policy that we will be talking about, which will eliminate our dependence on oil from the Middle East, that will then prevent us from having ever to send our young men and women into conflict again in the Middle East.
Oh, but friends, this time it's different. It's not about oil this time. It's not about oil pipelines this time. It's about those innocent civilians that lay dead in the streets. And we need to appeal to your patriotism. And we need to appeal to your national conscience. If not us, then who? And if not now, then when? The bombs could begin falling as early as tomorrow. Heads up and eyes open.
Follow the Money Weekly presents your precious metals market update. Here's Tom Cloud.
Things have changed since we did the midweek update on Wednesday. Syria has kind of gone to the back burner here on Friday as we record this, and the UN has intervened, and basically we've seen gold and silver prices fall overnight on that news. Once again, we've got to keep our eye on the major item that's going to affect gold and silver the remainder of the year, and that continues to be the debt ceiling having to be raised after Labor Day sometime in either September or October. So when that comes, we're going to see arguments by the Democrats and Republicans, but in the end, just like every time before, they will raise the debt ceiling somewhere between $1.5 and $2 trillion, and historically that has sent gold and silver straight up every single time that's been done. So this war stuff is really a blip on the screen. It's a lot of good talk for timers, but for us that are getting our money out of the paper debacle and the debasement of currency, it just gives us another time every time the gold and silver pulls back. But I tell you something, Jerry, the most important thing is backwardation continues in the market now for 9 weeks. In 37 years of doing this, I have never seen anything like it. And all it proves is that people are not willing to sell their physical metals. And when we see the price higher today than it is in the futures market, everybody in the world that's been in this market even a year understands what's going on, and that is that people are buying the physical metal, especially in Asia, and we continue to see deliveries taken in vaults in the U.S. and England, inventories going down substantially as Asians take delivery of their physical gold and silver. So the backwardation, every week that it continues, just continues to build a slingshot for us and the prices of gold and silver. We also got to remember next week we'll be closed on Labor Day, but on the next day after that, the Europeans are back from their month of vacation. We're back from our vacation weekend, and this is usually when we get things moving. We've had a great month of August in the metals, and we expect that to continue through the fall. Yes, there will be some volatility. So as this is announced, I would just say continue to accumulate what you can, both in the gold and the silver, and just watch for an acceleration in money printing and not tapering off, as a lot of people seem to think the Fed will do in September. I just don't see that happening from my personal opinion. So we're set up for a very good move. We've seen gold now go from a bottom of 1180 up over 1400, and we've seen silver go from the bottom of 1854 up to $24, a 30-something% move. And like I said, because of the shortage of physical and the backwardation in the market, we expect this to continue. So the palladium continues to be kind of silent as we wait out all the situation in war. War is not good for palladium and platinum usually because it is so heavily used in industrial uses. It doesn't go up like what we call the money metals, which are gold first and silver second, where they are actually money or substitutes for money or the real money, and as far as the history is concerned. So if any of you need to talk to me, you can reach me at 800-247-2812, 800-247-2812, and the other two subject matters that if you are in the market and need to talk to me about is getting rid of your rare coins that have done nothing compared to bullion coins before this next big move happens, if you're still holding collector coins, and then also getting a precious metals IRA is more important today than at any time in history, with all the talk of what the government may or may not do with your retirement accounts and a 401k. So all that, if you need to talk, give me a call. And lastly, if you're not on our email blast, You can sign up for that at ftmdaily.com and go to the Precious Metals button and sign up, and we'll put you on the list and send you 2 or 3 blasts a week, and the list is completely confidential. We don't share our email list with anybody whatsoever. So anyway, with this week's Precious Metals Market Update, this is Tom Cloud signing out.
Hey friends, this is Jerry Robinson from Follow the Money Weekly. Recently, we have been receiving many emails from our listeners commenting on the great help they're getting from our precious metals expert, Tom Cloud. Gold and silver are excellent hedges against the growing threat of coming U.S. inflation. Who's your gold guy? Make it Tom Cloud. With over 30 years' experience with precious metals, Tom will answer all of your questions. Don't buy your gold and silver through some call center and pay inflated prices. Call my good friend Tom Cloud and speak directly with him and get all of your questions answered. For a limited time, Tom is offering free shipping and insurance on every gold and silver purchase made by our listeners. Call 800-247-2812. And when you do, tell him that Jerry Robinson from Follow the Money Weekly sent you, and he'll throw in that free shipping and insurance on your entire order. Call your gold guy, Tom Cloud, right now for the very best deals on gold and silver coins. 800-247-2812. That is 800-247-2812.
With this week's Trigger Trade Report, I'm Jennifer Robinson. We sold 3 stocks this week in our trigger trading portfolio. Gold mining ETF, ticker symbol GDX, sold for 9.84%. Silver mining ETF, ticker SIL, gave us a 7.62% return, and we profited 9.25% in just 3 days from trading Sandstorm Gold, ticker symbol SAND. The Ultra Pro Short S&P 500, ticker symbol SPXU, sold off when it touched its stop-loss price, setting this trade at a 4% loss. However, more than making up for the loss is the S&P 500 Volatility ETF, ticker symbol VXX, which is still in play in the portfolio, standing at a total gain of 10.5%. 6 stocks have not reached Jerry's trigger price yet. Trigger trading is a service we offer all of our FTM insiders, in which every single day they receive Jerry's trading idea of the day. Of course, it comes complete with a trigger price, stop-loss price, commentaries, and status updates every single day. You can learn more at ftmdaily.com/trigger trade.
Well, friends, that brings us to the end of our program. Thank you so much for choosing to allow me into your life each and every week. It is an honor and a privilege to be a part of yours as well. And as always, I leave you with this final word, this time from Thomas Jefferson, who said, "When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. But when the government fears the people, there is liberty." Very poetic and very true words spoken by one of our founding fathers. I want to wish you a very happy, prosperous, and safe 3-day holiday weekend this Labor Day weekend. Wishing you and your family all the best. And remember, when you're ready for the truth, just follow the money. Have a safe and prosperous week, and I'll see you right back here next weekend. God bless.